over in the uh, so we are live, and I'm doing the same thing over here, and here we go. All right, so let me kick off and said hello and welcome to the Now Share with Dr. Dave podcast. I am Dr. Dave A. Cornelius. Everyone calls me Dr. Dave, and I am your host on our podcast. So today we're going to dive into the topic of generative leadership. And my wonderful guest today is Earl Cobb and his wonderful wife, Dr. Charlotte Grant Cobb. So how are you guys doing?
We're wonderful. Thanks for having us, Dave.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we have to start off with something fun. So I was asked us to, think about a song or a spoken word that's inspiring you today. And, are you able to hum a few bars or recite a few words?
Well, it's just a coincidence because we noticed in a lot of your discussions about generative leadership, you're talking about having leaders and their people to be able to, climb their mountain and
Yes.
get to that point and all the work that I've done over the past at least decade on peak performance. I keep sharing also with my clients the idea of not being afraid of that mountain, right?
Yep.
And mutually, after 42 years, we have learned that ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from giving to you, babe.
Oh, wow.
That's our song.
No, that is so good. That is that's a great theme song for this series, right? Getting to your
Yes.
mountaintop. But
Absolutely.
yeah, well, but elevator pitch, right? And it doesn't have to be an elevator pitch, but tell the audience who you are and the great work that you're doing.
Why don't you go first?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go first. Dave, I am like in our book, Living a Richer Life. I am at that point in life where I'm experiencing that lifetime of good decisions, and I have that feeling of completeness now. And so, what I'm working to do is to influence the leaders of the next generation, but I also want to support the folks that are still here, whose shoulders I have stood on for these years, and to support them while they're still here to tell their story. So that's what I'm about right now.
Okay.
Well, when I'm at home, I'm like my shirt said, I tried to retire, but now I work for my wife. But to the outside world, I'd say I'm a retired corporate technologist and business executive, living my best life as a published author, speaker, consultant, and hoping to leave a legacy of being a good man. That's good, G-O-O-D, which stands for, when people think of me, hopefully they'll say he was gracious and caring. He owned all of his responsibilities. He was an outstanding son, husband, and father, and he died with no regrets.
I don't think Charlotte is ready for you to even think about that. So be good now.
That's right.
But what's important there is the legacy, and I'm
Yes,
sure
sir.
we're going to talk about that when you
Yeah.
think about the idea of being not just a leader, but being a generative leader. You've got to think
Yeah.
about your legacy.
So when we talk about generative leadership, what separates a generative leader from those who motivate? And how do they really create this wonderful environment where individuals find their intrinsic drive and climb their own mountains?
Mhm.
Well, as you know, one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to be able to do with the help of my wife since I retired from corporate America in 2010 was to spend a lot of time in understanding not just my leadership style and history, but how does this whole idea of leadership fits into individuals as well as organizations. And to get to your question on generative and beyond motivation, one of the key things that I latched onto when I saw that was the idea of how do you allow people discovery?
Mm.
Okay. For example, when I was telling the people at Wells Fargo, which was the last corporation that I was a part of, where I headed all of the corporate data centers, people were asking me, "Earl, you're going to retire. What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to write." And they said, "Write? What do you mean write? You've been an engineer, you've been a technologist, you've been a manager. What are you going to write?" I said, "Well, believe it or not, if what I've discovered over the last 15 years of my corporate career is that I did more scripting, writing, motivating, coming up with the ideas and the thoughts that could be shared with all of my teams, upward and downward. And I've got something to write about. And what I discovered is that I can take that and I can put it in a form that I can share it." Well, you got to allow your people to get into this mode of discovery. How can you discover? What can you discover about yourself? What can you discover about this situation? And that motivates them more than doing some basic jumping up and down and hurrahing to motivate them.
That's good.
Yeah, Charlotte, you going to add or
I think that's good, Dave. I'll let that sit and marinate in that.
just marinate in that a little bit?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's beyond motivation, and we're thinking about
Mhm.
the abundance mindset shift,
That's right.
right? I mean, people talk about growth mindset. For me, I want to talk about an abundance mindset where I know as a leader I have more than enough capacity, right, to enable others. So talk to me about how leaders can cultivate this abundance mindset in themselves and their teams, just shifting away from the scarcity mindset and competition for collaboration and shared success.
Yes, I think you have to really, as a person think it so they are, right? Um,
Mm,
you know, we are true believers in that. And, we wrote Thinkable Thoughts to inspire people to start their days with thoughts that stimulate creation, stimulate abundance. And that abundant thinking, I think, is how do you inspire and encourage that in other people? And I think it really starts with asking good questions. When you're a listener and a coach, what you do is ask questions, and you ask positive questions, and you ask and you're curious about what's going on in their mind, and then you can help them stay away from the negative self-talk and encourage that abundant thinking and that exploration and that discovery. So I think that starts there.
Yeah, yeah. And the idea of abundance means that you've got not just a lot of the same thing.
Mhm.
Okay. So being a deep thinker on a few topics, in my mind, you cannot obtain the level of abundance that you can have or that you should have based on where your organization, where your team, what you're being asked to do. Okay. And that starts, I've learned early, okay, with being curious about many different things. Okay. If I have a team of 50 people, certainly I got at least 25 or 30 different hobbies. I've got 25 or 30 different things that people like or do. And if I am narrow and can't relate to that particular individual or those sets of individuals or that team broadly, then it's hard for me to have an abundant mindset. I can have a big, narrow mindset. I can have a deep, narrow mindset. But if you don't read, if you don't think about different thoughts, if you don't think about different levels of communication, if you don't think about different issues, and that's why I found it very difficult when I was at the top of my game leading large organizations. I found it difficult not to get out there and spend the time with the people, regardless of where they are in their location, and become synthesized with those local issues and those local concerns and what they do. I've done a lot of things that I wouldn't naturally do, like curling in Montreal, okay, and climbing, up a mountain in Oregon. But you have to do those things in order to really get in touch with those people if you got that type of diverse team and those types of diverse locations.
And I'll go, and if I could go one further, Dave, I'm in an organization now it's a large organization, and they're being challenged from shifting away. There's a perception that they're shifting from core mission. So from a generative leadership perspective, I've seen leadership encourage, first of all, not that we're shifting away from core mission or that we're not abundant enough to include what we used to do with where we're going. And that's that generative leadership that says, we don't have to abandon where we've been to see where we're going and figure out a way to get there. And I think that's abundance, including the past with the present and the future.
No doubt, and some of the stuff of getting out there, looking at a lean context of called a Gemba walk to go and see. And so Earl has been, and you guys have been doing that, which is beautiful, But, as a generative leader, we talk trust is foundational, right? And so how can leaders create a culture of trust where they have their team members feel empowered, supported, and safe to take risk and fail forward?
Yeah, this is an area that we did a tremendous amount of research and survey analysis as we were preparing to write what I think is one of our best and very focused books called The Smart Leader and the Skinny Principles. And chapter 9 of The Smart Leader and the Skinny Principles, we dedicate to this whole idea of leaders truly understanding what trust is. Okay, you can say the word, okay, but trust is not something, as you know, I'm sure most of the audience knows, that's given. Trust is earned. Okay, and as easily as you acquire that trust, you can lose it. And in that chapter, which is based on narrative learning, we have a narrative about a leader that took over after a leader that had been in this nonprofit organization for years passed away. It happened to be named Mike. Okay, and the moral of the story is, why couldn't you be like Mike? Okay. And it goes out and lays out these tenets of trust, but probably the most important thing from a generative standpoint. And when I say generative, I mean getting away from the normal, not allowing yourself to get filled with you being the leader, and so you're entitled to have that trust, but actually recognizing when you lose that trust. And understanding, how can I regain that trust? And I've always told all of my direct reports that you've got to understand that in an organization, trust is the only currency you can use to allow people to want to do what you want them to do in the most sincere way.
That is so profound. And you see this happening where, during COVID, we said, oh, everyone could work remotely and we trust you, and organization were thriving.
Mhm.
It's not like they were, and now it's like, come back, everyone has to come back, and forcing people
Right.
back into the office. So we had a comment out there from someone, Marvin Jackson, who says, returning to the office not necessarily bring back those skills in terms of relationships, but I still believe that if we had trust then, we should still keep that trust now and enable people to live their best life and still give you great value in your organization as a leader. So,
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to abundance, right?
yes, of course.
You know, and and can I just say I had an experience yesterday with one of my team members, and it really was around psychological trust.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure that if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, Dave, about psychological trust, if I'd have known what that meant. But the must return to a box that doesn't fix the problems, the same
Yeah.
problems that existed pre-COVID are still there now. We haven't fixed anything, and we're not fixing it by returning. The psychological trust, I didn't even realize I was giving it. It was just intuitive to me to try to protect someone who was feeling put upon to say and as it was just natural intuitive for me, but it turned out to be so very, very important for my colleague. And so I think I think, Earl, and I always say you have to make trust job one.
Yeah.
That
Has to be job one. And it's not and as you know, it's not simple because it's
no.
a two-edged sword. I mean, it is even as a leader, I may want to trust, but if I haven't spent the time to become familiar with two down in my organization, if I haven't taken the time to get familiar, to make sure that I understand who this team really is and what their capabilities really are, even though that's your manager's job. But if you don't have that connection, just like a marriage or relationship, if you don't have that familiarity,
Right.
if you don't have the time together, you can know what you should do as a leader to extend trust, but that's hard to do when you know what's on the line and you know what your superiors and the people that you're reporting to, whether it's shareholders or board, expect.
Yeah.
So if you can't just wait to say I'm going to have this trust when 9/11 comes. When COVID
Next
comes,
COVID comes, right? Yeah.
you start building that trust now. But also, why is it important for team members to make sure they understand, as you started out, this idea of abundance and motivation? All of that's a part of it, that words, right? Being authentic and all the words that have come out in the buzzwords recently about. But the idea is all those things become more important in times of crisis.
Yep. And Dr. Dave, I don't want to belinger trust, but it's so super important. And I just want to share these experiences, right? Especially in generative leadership, where you're creating an environment for trust. Colleagues have to trust each other. And, we have lived in this competitive nature. And so you're looking at your colleague across the hallway or virtually on Zoom, and maybe you don't think they contribute at the same level that you contribute. And as a leader, it's my job to make sure that trust extends across my organization and to each other. And one of the ways I've done that is I've had this question from sometimes my boss will say, well, that's not your job. It's not your job to fix this. It's not your job to make sure they understand. And I tell them it is my job. It is my job. I am an 8th grade teacher in an organization. I have to teach everybody who comes to that classroom. I don't get to discriminate. Everybody who shows up at my door gets to learn, and it's my job to make sure that they do so. So I think that helps other colleagues say, oh, everybody is equally important, even if we don't contribute in the same way, right? So,
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
yeah, those two, abundance mindset and trust, are
mhm,
foundational. But what that really helps us to do is to begin to unleash the potential of others,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
it's not like, okay, just about me and them trusting me and and me trusting them, but think let's talk about how generative leaders identify and nurture the strengths and
right.
and talents of their team members, just helping them find their paths to, to the top.
Well, if you take most of the leaders that I have known and experienced, very few of them would fit into that category of being generative the way you defined it in your books and in your talks. Uh, and it's easier for me to talk about it with about what they're not doing.
Mhm.
Okay. And the one thing that mistake that we all have made, I know I have, and most leaders make,
Yeah.
is this idea that treating everyone the same is treating everyone equally.
Yeah.
And that is a fallacy. Okay. Okay. Uh, Same thing that you think you're doing for the person that really, really, really needs your help could be an insult to the person who really, really know all that and need another level of communications with
Mhm.
you,
Mhm.
and vice versa.
Right, right. And
Okay.
yeah. And can I add this idea of unleashing people's potential, right? When you create that environment of trust and abundance, and you find and you allow that person to, even if it's reaching their maximum level of capacity, and they're a C student, they're a
Yeah.
C student. Okay, do we not need C students? We need every contributor we can get. So what I do in my organization is, if you're a C student, I'm going to give you all the C stuff, and they excel at the C stuff. Okay, that allows my A folks to do all the A stuff that they want to do. And I'm not, as a leader, I'm not suppressing the C performance and suggesting that they can't be an A performer. We have gone through some stuff together as colleagues and teammates to get to the point of understanding, you know what, this is what they're able to give or want to give. And I want to maximize what my team member wants to give to the organization or can give to the organization. Just maximize that, and everybody gets to reach their level of self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
You know.
And the difficulty here, as you know, Dave, it varies
Yeah.
from environment to environment, from disciplines to disciplines, differently if you're on a sports team or, what I mean?
Mhm.
So you can take this as, but there's different ways it's done in the various,
Mhm.
careers and various job environments. I remember when I was heading up Motorola Secure Communications, I spent a lot of time in the Pentagon and National Security Agency. And I used to go into these meetings, and I was fairly young for my age. And you go in there and hear these 4-star generals, right? You can sit at the table in the brainstorming section. For example, this one was about how to equip the space shuttle with secure communications. And you sit in this room, and here's this 4-star general sitting there. And the way he would use to try to stimulate discussion, he'd lay back and go, okay, now, I'm the C student here. So why don't you guys let me know? You know what I mean? And everybody just relax. You know what I mean? Don't think they got to come out of some level, and they can come from whatever level that they are seeing the
Yeah.
picture. And that's how he gets all of these various dimensions of what is possibly really going on.
No, that's really great, because the next step is that now, how do we encourage failure and growth? And that is a huge thing, to treat failure as an opportunity to learn, right? So
Mhm.
how can you suggest actionable ways for generative leaders to create a safe space for failure, and then encourage experimentation and a growth mindset or an abundance mindset over just the fear of mistakes.
Mhm.
There's nothing like having someone operating from a position of fear.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Well, my thoughts there go back to 1979. Okay, when Bob Galvin was still CEO of Motorola, the company his father founded. Okay, and he did that by creating something that seemed so simple,
Mhm.
but it tried to be revolutionary. Six Sigma.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Right.
huge.
Right.
Okay. And the broader message is broadly publicize lessons learned.
Yeah.
And that's what that did. Okay. When you go into those reviews every month, when I went in there as a project manager and did my project reviews, my program reviews, they weren't there to necessarily beat me up because I didn't meet my financial numbers or whatever, but it gave everybody in that room a chance on that performance and what's really going on to see what went right and what went wrong and what can we do about it next time. In too many places, that's hush hush.
Yeah.
Or it's narrow. Okay. But broadly publish your lessons learned. Perfect example, not necessarily a good example, just recently with the Boeing and the 37-9. And I'm sure Marvin was listening to I mean, what happened there? There's no way the CEO of Boeing can do anything other than come out and say, gosh, to see that he went, wow, ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was. Okay.
Mm-mm-mm. So, I mean, as we create those wonderful spaces for us to, unleash potential, dealing with the ability to create space for failing and learning and growing. The other thing is like, how do we get out of the way, without being micromanagers, right? How can
Mhm.
these wonderful generative leaders empower their teams to encourage autonomy, while providing guidance and support? So give some practical strategies for effective delegation and fostering ownership in different initiatives.
Yeah, I would start first by saying, and it tags right back to that broadly publicizing lessons learned, right?
Yeah.
If you're not penalizing people for being wrong, there's no Alice in Wonderland queen cutting off heads. There are no heads on spikes when you walk in the door. And I've worked in organizations where you walk in the door and you're like, uh-oh,
Mm.
who's in trouble? Whose head is on the spike? Number one, you don't want an environment as a generative leader. You do not want an environment that persecutes failure. Um, and so that carries over to that leading and managing. You can manage tasks, and we've all talked about that.
Yeah.
Micromanaging tasks is so counterproductive to actually achieving goals. It's time consuming, it irritates colleagues, and really at the end of the day, it doesn't produce anything. Um, but sort of like, Dr. Dave, when we were talking back when we were really dealing in that agile environment, and we were really talking about, what gets done first, what gets done first that's working and that's needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of focus, that's a leadership mindset, as opposed to a task that may not actually contribute to an outcome,
No, but it's crazy that we've all been in these different environments where we have a micromanager and we have some fear because of him or her, and so even coming into work, your mindset is
Mhm.
very cloudy.
Oh,
In terms of like, oh my gosh, I have to show up there. Let me call in sick today.
right. Oh yeah. Yeah. Some days you as the leader you don't even want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I know that feeling. So,
Mhm.
but the pivot of that is to celebrate, victories collectively, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
getting to that mountaintop could feel really personal. But as a generative leader, we understand it takes a village, a team, a group of us to make things happen, right? And so, how do we recommend ways to celebrate successes collaboratively, ensuring everyone feels valued and also part of the journey? That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it gets back to this idea of publicly acknowledging the contributions, but doing it in a way that it really addresses the contributions of everyone that's involved. I mean, it's one thing to say, great, team, we did this. But it's another thing to say, hey, we really had a great outing here. Now, Dave took the ball and took it to the 14th yard line. And even though he stumbled, he didn't fumble. Okay. Yeah. And then Joe picked it up. And, if you can see, if they can paint the picture of what really happened and how it happened as a team. Okay. And because that is how things happen. And particularly as you get up at the most senior levels within organizations, where you've got maybe 8 or 9 direct reports, and all of those direct reports are senior vice presidents, and they got very large organizations around you that you really don't know much about, but you got to figure out, okay, how to communicate with them in a way that allows them to give you more input because they got more input than you have to give to them.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you structure that, and what's your tone there? But that doesn't begin, in that meeting room. I mean, that has already begun years and days and times before that, of them, being able to trust you, for them understanding how deep your abundance is, to understand their particular part of the project or part of the company. I mean, so it's not as simple, again, as just wanting to do it. It's a matter of putting yourself in a position as a leader, such that when that situation arises, you've got all that currency that you gained along the way that you can spend.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. But that walks us into the topic of sharing encouragement. Sometimes it's like, how do we offer advice or give some guidance for aspiring leaders, where I like to call them emergent leaders, right? They're not just aspiring, they're emergent. They're going to find ways to lead in different ways that the organization needs. So how do we help those leaders who may not have as much confidence or experience, but really want to embrace this generative way of leading, because it's the way of the future. So that's my opinion anyway, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go with you on that, Dr. Dave. And I'm just going to go right here to this, creating that environment. When you work with multi-generations, you and for emerging leaders, one of the things I would encourage them to understand is there are multi-generations in your organization. You don't get to just pick the digitally savvy or the most experienced or the best talkers. You have to create an environment where everyone thrives. And so how do you do that? Well, that's encouragement, right? The easiest thing for a generative leader to do is say thank you. If you say thank you to all the people that you connect with and that are working with you, it just goes a long way to helping you communicate on the next level, even having tough conversations. They start with thank you for the stuff you did. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for showing up. Let's talk about where we need to go next.
Yeah. But if you have I want to say young leader, but new leader, all right, who really needs some, you talked about advice or whatever, as you know from the consulting piece, it is very difficult to know what to say or what to share if you do not know where the individual is currently sitting,
Mm.
both psychologically, okay, mentally, okay, and organizationally. That's why whenever I have a client, particularly a mid-level to senior client, and they call, I know they're calling because they got an issue, or I
Mhm.
wouldn't hear from them.
That's
Okay.
right.
And when they do call, I don't try to, I mean, I'm not a shrink, but I don't try to jump right in and tell them what I did at Motorola. Well, Motorola don't exist no more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't, so, but what I try to do is ask the question to try to find out what is it that what is the situation that they are really in right now?
Mhm.
Because it's so hard sometimes for even leaders to recognize the situation that they're in. Okay. So I'll talk about the organization. Has there been organizational changes recently? Oh, really? Did you know Joe before he became head of the division? Or, I mean, you begin to get a sense of
Yeah.
what might be there, because in many cases, what this particular individual is trying to solve isn't the problem that they have, isn't the task that they were given. It's in their mind that that's what they have to do at this time. Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
later on, you may get to that point to where you have to think about it that way. Okay. But slow down, take a deep breath, and understand what is the situation truly.
Mhm.
And like Michael Jackson used to say, the man in the mirror can't see that in many
Yeah.
cases.
Mhm.
Okay, because of the elephant in the room, which
Yep.
is your mind.
Mhm.
And your mind is there to protect you and play tricks uh, on you. So it's hard. So when you come to someone wanting, you know, then you want to make sure that that person is someone that knows that they're just not going to throw something out there
Yeah,
and
you're
say
going to be
generative this
listening.
and generative that, but work at it in terms of the fundamentals of the issue, and maybe discuss some lower level strategies to get up to another point of strategic implementation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts, words you would like to leave our listening audience with?
Well, hopefully it'll be a while before you see that good on my.
No epitaphs in the near future, right? I want to say that, this is it's 2024, and as a planet, we have been through a planet and a people. We have been through a lot,
Yeah.
and we all need to give ourselves some grace,
Mm.
and give ourselves some grace, give others around us some grace, and let's kind of step into this next phase together, just giving each other grace and giving each other some space to breathe and grow.
That's a good way to kind of leave things, right? Just using the concept of grace.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, thank you for giving your time and energy, and sharing your knowledge, with this audience. I know many people would appreciate this after the fact, because it goes into the podcast world, and of people listening and watching, after this live event. But so just thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you
joining.
Thank you,
for
Dr. Dave.
having us, and
Yes.
I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about generative leadership again.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Yes, so just let me close by saying thank you for listening to the Knowledge Share with Dr. Dave podcast. This has been a great opportunity to spend some time with Earl Cobb and Dr. Charlotte Grant Cobb. You could find this podcast on Audible, Spotify, Google, Apple, and probably 25 more other channels. And you know, just one more thing. Do you guys want to just, provide a way for people to connect with you?
Oh,
Well, the best way would be to just go to my company's website at richyourlifellc.com
Okay.
and WICH LIFELLC.com, and you'll see a lot of videos about all the things that we've done and authors that we've published and a lot of things about why it's important. And by the way, richer life isn't about money. So if you go there, you'll find out that there's a different definition for living a richer life.
Oh, I can't wait. So I'm going to put that in the show notes, make sure everyone can get there. And with that, just thank you again and just hang tight.